Um, nice. All right. We're recording. Welcome everyone to our August Advocacy in Action webinar. We're joined by Nicole, and she is going to be speaking to us about a initiative that we're just starting recently. And we'll also be having our traditional Advocate of the Month award given out at the end. So wait till the end for a nice surprise. Nicole, if you want to kind of share your screen, kind of introduce yourself to those if they don't know you.
Yes, absolutely. Let me get that up here. Oh. Okay. Everyone see that okay? All right. So super excited to be talking to everyone today about So Kids Can Move initiative. This is absolutely a team-based initiative at AOPA. I'm excited to kick us off, but Sam will be talking about it throughout this as well. Sam and I have been working really closely on this along with Joy and Eve and everyone really internally at AOPA. So just curious if anyone's already heard about So Kids Can Move, just by a show of hands or awesome. Okay, our communications are getting out to you. But obviously some of you guys are on here today because you want to learn more about it. And we're really excited to tell you all about it. So just on a high level, So Kids Can Move is a new policy and advocacy initiative that AOPA has started, working to expand access to recreational prostheses as medically necessary healthcare for children on a state-by-state basis. And this is actually something that internally at AOPA and more broadly has been kind of working under the radar for a number of years, actually. And most recently, kind of coalesced and started as a joint partnership that AOPA moved into with the National Association for the Advancement of Orthotics and Prosthetics. And kind of want to just lay out the timeline here, at least within this past year, of how things have all kind of come together to have So Kids Can Move become a reality. So it was really last year in 2021 that NAOP came to AOPA and said, hey, let's work on a joint partnership together to help expand the definition of medical necessity. And in February, we really kicked off that team with the NAOP. And this is really kind of the heart and mission of this kind of coming together in this joint partnership was to show that people with disabilities deserve the right to exercise, but because of a lack of insurance coverage of medically necessary prosthetic and orthotic care, this prevents individuals from having equitable access to participate in physical activity. And I'm sure many of you know and understand that day to day, whether in your role in the clinic or as in administration or whatnot. For me, it was something that was very personal. I'm an amputee myself, having lost my leg to bone cancer when I was 10, and struggled for many, many years to get access to what I needed to be physically active. So this is something that is near and dear to my heart, but also to many of us because we see this and the impact that it has on our patients. And so NAOP and AOPA came together in February and started to kind of hash out what this partnership would look like, how we would operationalize it, and some of these kind of work groups within that partnership. For example, coalition building, having public relations around this effort, policy development, advocacy, some research as well, and then of course funding. And funding mainly looking at what corporate partners could we bring into this to help operationalize this issue and make some change on it. And I do want to, the reason this picture is on here on the right is I want to make a point about what we're talking about here and just the general landscape of when we think about physical activity. I'd say for a long time, most people have thought about physical activity for individuals with amputation in relation to elite athletes or Paralympians, and access to running blades is very exclusive, and that it would only be for an elite individual. Even my own experience getting access to a running blade, although I have done many athletic feats myself, I was very nervous because I thought, having access to a running blade, I've only ever seen that on Paralympians. What's that going to be like? Is it going to take a lot of training? but from my own experience, it's just the most natural thing ever to have a running prosthesis and to have something that provides more energy return. And this is something for individuals beyond just elite Paralympians and elite athletes. This access to this type of technology is appropriate prosthetic care, appropriate orthotic care as well. And the reason why that we're so passionate about this and why we need to make change on this is because of ultimately what that care provides. And what that care provides is the outcome of having access to physical activity and the benefits that come from physical activity. These photos are from a recent CAF, the Challenged Athletes Foundation, and OSER Mobility Clinic that's in DC. And myself, Sam, Joy, and Eve at AOPA actually all attended that event and helped volunteer. And if this isn't something that you're aware of, definitely want to put the CAF OSER Mobility Clinics on your radar as something to bring your patients to, so to have that sense of community and just access. But one of the key, I guess, issues that I wanted to bring up here too is that children with disabilities are 4.5 times less physically active than their peers. And there's a whole host of reasons for that. But one of them in particular is the lack of access to appropriate prosthetic care. And hence why this is so important that we need to solve that. And physical activity, isn't just for Paralympians. It isn't just for kids. It's for people of all ages, all ability levels. And adults with disabilities, we see as well, are less physically active overall than individuals without disabilities. That only 1 in 2 people with adults with disabilities get any type of cardiovascular activity. So on the whole, this is something, we need to solve, and there's a huge problem in terms of access to a better way of life and all the benefits that come from physical activity, maintaining your weight, preventing cardiovascular issues, diabetes, and the mental and social benefits of physical activity as well. And here's just a little picture of our crew when we attended that CAF and OSER mobility clinic, and highly encourage you all to get involved with them and to bring your patients to these types of events that they do all across the country. So all of that being said, kind of setting the stage for, why is AOPA looking at physical activity in this way? Why do we want to define it as medically necessary? NAOP coming on board as a partner. Well, as all of this is happening, kind of under the radar, these rock stars in Maine, Jordan Simpson, who's a limb loss advocate there, as well as Representative Colleen Madigan, are working, churning behind the scenes to try and do something on this exact issue. And so we found out about this actually after it had already been passed and enacted into law. They enacted LD 1003, an act to improve outcomes for persons with limb loss, which is a law that requires insurance companies to consider the recreational purposes as part of evaluating medical necessity. And I'll let Sam kind of dive into what that is exactly, that relationship. But we reached out to Jordan and set up a call with her at the end of June.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. I think this story really highlights how no 2 advocacy situations are really the same, and no 2 timelines for achieving an advocacy goal are ever really similar. In this case, Simpson was she was a social work student, and she wrote a grad school paper on this issue, and it kind of caught the attention of Representative Madigan, who decided to kind of partner with her on creating this legislation. They ended up testifying at a hearing about this legislation, and it really passed very quickly, kind of like we said, under the radar. We only found out about it once it was kind of already on its way to being passed, and that usually doesn't happen with these types of legislative processes. Usually there's a lot of deliberation. It takes a long time and a lot of kind of pre-work to get these types of things into gear. So that was very interesting. And then if you want to look at the actual kind of legislation, the actual text itself, basically insurance carriers are made to consider the recreational needs of people under 18 when they're determining coverage of prosthetics. In the text itself, I believe it mentioned running, biking, swimming, and upper limb function kind of in general as well. And so this is a mandate similar to the mandate that recently passed in Virginia, which was more of a blanket prosthetic mandate coverage for medically necessary devices that are less for recreational purposes, but more for general mobility purposes. And this becomes into effect for plans after January 1st, 2024. So it's not going to be actually in place for a long time, for a relatively long time. But after that, they're going to be reporting on the results of this legislation, which is going to actually be really helpful to show us how many children this is affecting and whether or not this particular language is effective in, achieving the goal of providing these devices to children who want to do recreational activities.
And I'll make a note on, in terms of it coming into law, not until, or becoming effective, not until 2024. That's actually a good thing for AOPA, and that it gives us some time to dig in, work with the insurance carriers in the state of Maine, and also notify our membership so that they can really, put in the correct claims and get those, pass for their patients. So although it's, a couple years away, and it gives us some time to lay some groundwork in the state, which Sam will share a little bit more later too.
Absolutely, that prep time is really important. And part of kind of what's important about So Kids Can Move, and what we've really realized is that this initiative really aligns well with AOPA's strategic priorities, which, as you may know, we implemented very recently some new priorities, communicating the importance of orthotic and prosthetic care. I think it's fairly obvious in this initiative that we're showing that recreation is medically necessary and that it's a need, especially for young people. These laws, if we can get them passed, are going to increase access to this care for a group that needs it a lot. AOPA, we're really trying to help as many different groups as we can in the O&P space, and especially children. Having a focus on children really help us address that need. And we're really partnering with multiple people within and groups within the O&P space. There's NAOP, the Academy. We're also working with state-based groups and associations, kind of individual charitable groups and advocates, legislators. There's a whole kind of ecosystem of people who are going to be working with us to make this happen. And we're really excited about showing our work with them.
Absolutely. And, in tandem with those strategic priorities, seeing how much this effort, lines up with those, we decided, this is something that our membership wants. We did some polling to some of our members locally based in Washington and Oregon, and I'll share why, those two states to begin with, but reached out to individuals that are AOPA's members and asked, is this something that you would be interested in AOPA taking on, working with you at a state level? Is this important to your patients? And we just heard resounding support for the effort, and that there is a true need for this. And of course, that's, something we've been hearing, from the ground level for quite a while, but just wanted to confirm, this is something that AOPA's membership wants. So with all of that, this intentional effort that NAOP and AOPA had put together, hearing about what's happening in Maine, talking with Jordan, getting her feedback as a person who's a congenital limb amputee since, early age, and everything that she did in Maine, we decided that this would be an incredible effort, that we could take, what we're doing with NAOP and operationalize it into a kind of a state-based strategy. And so we launched this initiative called So Kids Can Move on July 26th in honor of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and are working to now target this on a state-by-state basis. And so just to kind of set the framework. If you guys aren't aware, AOPA, went through a rebranding process, set those our new vision and mission statements, as well as our strategic priorities. And so this vision really builds off of what AOPA's all-encompassing vision is, which is a world where orthotic and prosthetic care transforms lives. And so for So Kids Can Move, we're building on that. And it's a world where orthotic and prosthetic care transforms children's lives. And our mission, Kids Can Move, is to expand access to recreational prostheses as medically necessary healthcare for children on a state-by-state basis. And so far, AOPA and AOP are part of this effort. We're also bringing on the Academy, hopefully shortly here. We can formalize that partnership, but have already had conversations with Adrian Griffin there, their executive director. And there will be many more partners to come as part of this effort that we want to have outside of the O&P world as well. As Sam mentioned, we want other types of stakeholders, including charitable organizations on the state level, companies, PTs, OTs, pediatricians, a whole group of individuals that can get behind this and declare that, yeah, physical activity is necessary for children, and this is something that we need to do in order for them to have access. So I mentioned Oregon and Washington. So the reason I did that is because that is the first two states that So Kids Can Move is looking to expand to after Maine. And part of the reason for that is the strong membership and chapter, Academy chapter that is in the Pacific Northwest. We've got a lot of kind of exciting developments that are happening in both of those states. Insurance fairness has already been passed in Oregon, which to kind of back up and share, the Amputee Coalition has been working on a state level to pass insurance fairness. If you guys aren't familiar with that piece of legislation, this requires insurance companies to cover prosthetics and orthotics at the level of Medicare and Medicaid. And so far they have 21 states that have passed that, including Maine. And Maine's law that they recently passed, expanding to recreational prosthetics, built on that piece of legislation. And so Oregon is another state that has already passed that piece of legislation. Washington is actively pursuing that, and we see it as a way to get it in there before the actual law takes effect. In addition to that, you'll see on here there's two logos, Forest Stump and Hood to Coast. Forest Stump is a nonprofit that I founded a number of years ago and is tackling this exact issue, trying to bring physical activity to people with disabilities. And it just so happened that next week, actually, Forest Stump has a all physically challenged team that's competing in the largest running relay in the world, and that's Hood to Coast. And Hood to Coast is a really well-known brand in Washington and Oregon. They have lots of connections to various corporate partners and entities. And by doing this race, as I'll show here, it is a way to bring disability representation to the race, but also a way to promote So Kids Can Move as part of this. So there's around 19 to 20,000 people that do this race every year, but people with disabilities make up less than 1% of these racers. And so having a team that's all physically challenged is definitely going to have a spotlight as part of this race. And we're already getting media coverage as a result of that. This is the team that we have put together that are promoting So Kids Can Move to their own communities. They're all across the country, and many of us are in Oregon and Washington. We've got individuals with limb difference, amputees, spinal cord injuries, multiple sclerosis, clubfoot, and majority of our team uses prosthetics and orthotics. And also we're either born with our disabilities or acquired them as children, and can speak to that experience of not having access and what that was like for us. So for example, Patrick Pressgrove is one of our athletes, an incredible friend of mine. He's in Houston, Texas, bilateral above knee amputee. And he speaks from his own experience of how he had both of his limb amputations, but it wasn't until he was in his mid-20s that he actually got access to his first running prosthesis. And it really completely changed his life, allowing him to become more confident in himself, becoming more social, And it's just incredible to see Patrick's story and what he's been able to do since getting access. Not only is he more physically fit and healthy, but from a social and self-esteem perspective, he's gone on to be an ambassador for Lululemon, for Strava. He's run the Boston Marathon multiple times. It's just absolutely incredible. And he speaks to this issue very well in terms of why children need access to physical activity. And that's kind of why we put this group together. Another individual on our team, Leah Kaplan, she's in Spokane, Washington, has limb difference. Her story is that for the majority of her entire life, she's been able to adapt to not having a prosthesis. And just recently, a few weeks ago, got her first prosthesis at the age of 30 to be able to bike. And growing up, she never really felt confident enough to advocate for herself or her needs, and realized that, you know, in order to be able to control a bike and to have the confidence to ride one, that she needed some extra support. And so through that process, she's been able to get access to a prosthesis for her, specifically for her bike, and just shares how pivotal this moment has been for her. You know, it's not, you know, something that's a luxury or that's not life-changing for both of them, for both Leah and Patrick. So those are kind of two of the stories of our teammates and what they've shared. But really what our team is helping to do is to raise awareness for So Kids Can Move at Hood to Coast. We've got Outside Magazine, who's profiling our team and bringing awareness to that. We've already been asked to be on a number of podcasts, and we're also targeting local news media as well to bring attention to this. And through this effort as well, we're also now connecting with local state legislators in both Oregon and Washington, and recently had a call with the chief operating officer of Hood to Coast, co-owner of Hood to Coast, who is very supportive of this because of Hood to Coast's mission of getting people to move, and has been able to help us connect and identify champions in the state. And so this is kind of just the first starting point and opportunity for us to partner with a local organization, bring attention to this issue, and start developing these key relationships in these states in order to work towards passing legislation. So with that, I'll share it back to Sam so he can kind of give an idea of our trajectory after August. And that team is actually happening next week. I'll be racing in it. It's 200 miles, 36 hours. So cheer us on social media. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can share kind of the next steps. So as Nicole said, we're really kind of laying the groundwork and talking to as many people as we can in both states to see if they can kind of connect us, or if there are any legislators that they believe would be kind of open to supporting our cause. And a lot of that's kind of doing research. If there's a legislator who has coached a lot of youth sports in their life, or is possibly like a pediatrician themselves, aside from their legislative work, those would be kind of two examples of people that we would think would be very helpful in kind of championing So Kids Can Move. And then that's kind of the first step, is that groundwork. And in Washington, since coverage legislation hasn't been passed yet, our main goal will be to get that coverage legislation reintroduced with the recreational prosthesis coverage added to that kind of as an amendment from the previous version. And then in Oregon, we would want to create standalone legislation for recreational prostheses on its own to be added to the legislation or the law that already exists since it's passed. And then on top of that, in Maine, since, as Nicole said, we have a lot of time before that law takes into effect, we're going to be, the communication side of that is going to be important, where we're going to have to let our members know that, hey, this is something that's covered now, talking to the insurance companies and just making sure that all the prep work is needed, that is done, so that we can get children the devices that they deserve for the activities that they want to perform. And then besides that, this is kind of in line with the next slide as well, but building this toolkit that states can use to kind of create their own change and advocacy within their own kind of localities. If you could go back to that map, Nicole, really quick, this is kind of the state of So Kids Can Move at the moment. We have the activities that we're currently pursuing in Washington and Oregon, and then there are also several other states where they've reached out to us personally and said, hey, we think that this would be a great kind of initiative to bring to our state. We think that there is either like legislative interest, or there's a kind of a population who is kind of willing to, or kind of conducive to this type of advocacy, or even there's a kind of a state group of practitioners, providers, advocates who would be helpful and create kind of a built-in partnership that's already there that would make things a lot easier to accomplish in that state. So I think that having this interest is really something that we're excited about at this early stage. To have these many states be on board with this initiative is amazing. But as part of that, we've created this model legislation with the help of NAOP. They've done a really great job of putting this together. This is kind of a model legislation that's based off of the legislation that's currently in place in Maine, that helps to provide this coverage for recreational devices for children. And it's just really, it's amazing that it's kind of a, Nicole used a great word a couple days ago. It's a plug and play legislation, and we can really kind of tweak it to the situation that's at hand in each state. I think that no two states are alike when it comes to the laws in their books and kind of the history of the text and how it's changed over time. So we're going to need to kind of make these changes depending on what's needed in each jurisdiction. And I think that NAOP really hit it out of the park with this one. But yeah, that's overall our overview of the So Kids Can Move initiative. Does anybody have any kind of questions or comments, or are y'all interested in bringing this to your state?
And I'll stop sharing so we can see everyone. Those FAQs on the end, we're working on developing really a toolkit or a packet of resources that we could share on a state-by-state basis. So for these other states that are interested, being able to direct them to a folder of resources that can have that model legislation, that'll have the FAQs, that can have a personally branded So Kids Can Move logo with, So Kids Can Move Oregon or So Kids Can Move New Mexico, whatever that looks like. And so something that we really want to be able to take and build a platform for it to be expanded beyond Maine and these other states as well.
I have a couple of questions, of course. One, have companies like Nike or Adidas been contacted? You're talking about the other stakeholders and corporate sponsors, because I know currently Nike and Adidas have been making an effort with their footwear for the limb different communities, and I just thought that would play in very nicely to their marketing. And also the nonprofit organizations, because as we know, a lot of the nonprofit organizations that work with OMP facilities are the ones that are focused on helping the children. How can we get them more involved, or the information out to them so that they can become more active? Because I know in a lot of cases, they do have connections to, the local legislators and people that might help in this initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. I can take that one. Definitely, these are organizations, companies that are on our radar, and we've begun conversations with individuals that have connections to Nike, Adidas. I also put down Zappos on running, has a new program called the Right to Run. We've reached out to them as well. Again, it's very early in its stages since we just launched this in July, but we're open to connections, conversations. If you guys have specific connections, as someone at Nike that's, you want to introduce us to, absolutely want to start having those, conversations with the right individuals. We just had a conversation recently with someone who is working with the founder of the Boston Marathon and the Boston Marathon Foundation, and discussing an opportunity to hold an event in Oregon, for example, with a number of children with limb difference, and all those connections that come with the Boston Marathon, like Nike, Adidas, and bringing those partners together in a kind of a localized event. So that's something that we're definitely considering and trying to push forward. And also just trying to get in touch with the right individuals at these organizations that are part of kind of their social impact or corporate social responsibility side of things that can put some money behind this initiative. So definitely we are going to be pursuing those connections. And to your point about the nonprofit kind of charitable organizations, we have been in conversation with a number of organizations like the Challenged Athletes Foundation, for example, but we definitely want to formalize some of those partnerships a little bit more as we move forward with this initiative.
And I'll also give you a name, and you guys may have already talked to her, but Cosi Beloso in Florida. I know she is also someone that is doing the Lululemon marketing campaign, and she works specifically with amputees. So it's something that's definitely right up her alley to bring voice to, because she also does virtual meetings, or she wouldn't call them meetings, but they are virtual meetings every week. And it would be great if you guys could get a spot on her show and bring it out, because she has a lot of amputees that watch it and participate, as well as a lot of patient care facilities and practitioners. So it'd just be another way of getting the word out.
Excellent. Yeah, I met with Cosi just a few weeks ago. I've known of her, and we had never actually officially met. And so we had this virtual meeting and we just hit it off. She's wonderful. She also brings such a great perspective as a physical therapist. And so we chatted a lot about the APTA, the Physical Therapy Association, and, seeing how maybe we can get some of this efforts and partnership in with them. But I would love to follow up with her on getting on her show and seeing how we can do some more work with Cosi too. Great. Thank you, Dana. That's super helpful.
I'll chime in here, sitting in the lovely suburb of Chicago. I actually met with Jim Kaiser this morning, who is the head of the Illinois Society, and, kind of piqued his interest talking about it. And he, of course, it was already on his radar, and he had a zillion questions for me. So I'm hoping, Sam, if you could send out a copy of this presentation that you did today, if I could share that with him. I know we've got a number of people in Illinois that are interested in the initiative, but I think we need to focus on maybe one person or one organization kind of spearheading it moving forward. And I'll tell you, Jim has been, I worked with him on parity legislation a number of years ago, and he is a bulldog. And he already, in his mind, he's already got, kids lined up that he thinks, would be great to testify in either the House or the Senate. So if I could share this with him, I think it just, the timetable moving forward would be really beneficial for him to know. And then you've talked to either Melissa or David or anybody from Dare to Try already? I thought.
Well, I'll actually be at their event in October.
Okay.
And haven't spoken to them specifically about this initiative, but definitely on our list to chat with them about. I think one of the things we're assessing is, how many states can we truly take on at one time? Right. But if we have, a really powerhouse state, Melissa, Dave Rotter, the whole team at Dare to Try, knowing that Senator Tammy Duckworth is in Illinois, and then your connections, Lori, Jim. I haven't met Jim myself, but it sounds like Illinois is a powerhouse state that's kind of coming to the table, but definitely will be something I put on their radar.
Yeah, Jim singletarily got the Blade added to the Medicaid fee schedule for kids here, and the
Oh,
Meyer
amazing.
Electric
And-
can.
and-
So go ahead, Joe.
And Jim is also a not too or fairly recently former AOPA president as well. So
Right.
Jim was AOPA president less than 10 years ago.
Mhm.
If not much more. If it's more than 10, it's not much more than 10. But
Right.
so there's an obvious connection there as well. He was on our board for several years and served as our president. So
Yeah, and he's
super good guy.
super good guy, and retired, but still so very active in the community, and just keeps it in the focus, in the forefront. So he's very interested in this. So we'll definitely, if I could get at least the slideshow, the slide deck to share with him initially, we'll start the ball moving.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to do our Advocate of the Month August announcement. This is a really it's really good kind of coincidence. I was going to nominate Lori as our winner this month because you've been to a couple of our webinars, and we really appreciate your kind of continued dedication to learning about advocacy. And I mean, I'm going to send you more information and these slides. I can put them all in the same email. That works perfectly.
And Lori,
Thank
I'm
you.
going to
That's
send you
really nice.
and I'll send you a $15 Starbucks gift card for you to enjoy
Wow.
1.5 cups of coffee.
1.5. That's
Oh, yeah.
perfect. Well, thank you. I appreciate what.
Your hanger email is a good one, I assume.
Yeah, my
to
hanger.
send the card to.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. So I just appreciate everything that AOPA does to support not only the O&P industry, but the patient side of it as well. It's really, you guys just are amazing. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, and once upon a time, Lori was kind enough to give me when one of my flight got canceled. Lori was kind enough to give me a ride from, I think it was Milwaukee, all the way down to Chicago, correct?
Yeah,
and
Madison.
get me to a connecting flight in Chicago. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was Madison, Wisconsin.
It was Madison. We drove from Madison, and Barrett got him there in the nick of time. He had to OJ Simpson through the airport. But he made
But
it.
I'll never forget you for that, Lori.
All right.
You saved my buns.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, I appreciate everybody coming by to learn more about So Kids Can Move. If you want to kind of spread the word, I think that would be really helpful. We'll continue to be kind of sending out regular communications to let everyone know what's going on and keep everyone updated. But we really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you all. Excited to keep you up to date on everything.
Mhm.
Nicole, will you be doing social media on the AOPA's channel for the race next week?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll try my best in the zones where we're not going to have service, but we'll try and get as much on social media as we can. It's going to be a fun 36 hours. And we just found another driver for our third van that's going to transport our wheelchair racers wheelchairs. So it's coming together. We've got everything set. That was just really the final part, that we needed a driver willing to commit to driving for 36 hours straight and doing that. So it's an
Wow.
amazing team of people.
Mhm.
Well, good luck and have
Yeah,
fun.
good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right, guys.